Stop me if you've heard this one before. Arsenal versus Barcelona in the round of 16. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, look, I'm not trying to bring back any bad memories during a good season, but it's all teed up, isn't it? It's like someone's decided it in advance. Barcelona do drop down into the Europa League. We can't face them in the round of 32 because we top the group, unlike United. Sorry, I had something in my throat. And yeah, but we can face Barcelona in the round of 16. I have to say, frankly, we owe them one. Like, you know what? If we have to face Barcelona in the round of 16, I can live with that. I can live with us maybe getting one over on them for all the years of pain and suffering. So we shall see what will happen with that. But we do top the group. I wouldn't say we did it in classic fashion. But here's the thing. If you're going to pay to go to the Emirates, don't you deserve to get the blood pumping? Don't you deserve to get adrenaline rush? Don't you just No, you probably just wanted 7-0. You didn't get 7-0. You got 1-0. It is a win. And we love you for being here. Thank you for coming to hear about it. We're going to talk, obviously, a lot about the Chelsea game at the weekend, as that is a little bit bigger. We might talk a bit about Mohamed El-Neni saying there are no more egos in the dressing room. I don't know if the quotes were super pointed, but they might be interesting enough to make it into a podcast following a game that nobody's interested in. We shall see. And a man who definitely was not interested in it, as he spent most of the night in the concourse, is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stoberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there. And for the people who are watching on video, I've got I look a bit like David Bowie in the Life on Mars video at the moment because I've got the sun absolutely beating down on my face. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the sun beating down on my face because we now record the podcast before sunrise my time. So super duper stuff all around. And a man who not just watched the video, but took notes and then wrote little X's and O's on his tactics board. Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello. And this is one game I haven't really rewatched to any extent yet. But
no, you haven't rewatched it.
There is still time.
Get on that. You can do it during the podcast. I know everybody's doing their own thing when somebody's talking. It's fine. It's all good. We still hear each other a little bit. Okay, so first things first. Clive, I'm somebody who likes to complain about the same shit over and over and over again. People know that about me by now, and they tolerate it so they can hear what you and Tim have to say. I was a believer that we would be able to make quick work of Zurich, and I felt that we should rotate appropriately for this match with an eye towards Chelsea on Sunday. Just so people know, Zurich were sitting dead last, rock bottom of the Swiss Super League with a minus 15 goal difference. And to be fair, though, they have just changed manager. And since doing that, they won their Super League game, Swiss Super League game, and they won their Europa League match against Bodo Glimt. So who knows? Maybe it was a case of, we talk about downing tools. When you're dead last and you're negative 15 goal difference, there's definitely a downing tools possibility going on there. There may have been something there. So I don't know. They definitely looked spirited in this game. But I think the thing that I like is that Mikel trusted his squad. And you have to trust your squad when the chips are down. This is a game they needed to be able to get through, and they just about did. How do you feel about the degree of rotation he chose for this game? I mean, he couldn't pick Xhaka because he was suspended, which is fine by me. But he did give, Nketiah and Nelson and Sambi and El-Neni, great to see El-Neni back, of course, and Holding. He gave the squad their chance. And I think it's important that he did it. And I think it's great that it means that we will go into the Chelsea game at least a little fresher than we otherwise might have.
Yeah, I think he's really improved in the rotation. I think he's done it in a collective way, and he's done it by minutes. So you see people get 20 minutes towards the end of a game or half hour at the start of a game. So he only extends one or two players, maybe Gabriel or Saliba on a couple of occasions, because we are really missing that left-footed centre-back, and it does mean a lot to us. I said yesterday, I'm not sure if Gabriel played in Eindhoven, but yeah, we sort of missed him for me. But yeah, I think he's done it really, really well. And he's also got, it's less fortunate, but we lose Xhaka from this game and we can bring El-Neni in to share the game with Partey, which means Partey's fresh for Sunday. He gets his 20 minutes jogging around. At a crucial time in the game, we need to settle him down. And it's worked out. Okay, we've been unfortunate with Tomiyasu, but Zinchenko's suddenly on the bench. You know what I mean? And Tierney's running up and down like a 3-year-old. So we've got a bit of luck. And you get luck when you do the rotation appropriately. We saw what Nelson did at the weekend with Saka. None of us thought that was coming. Next minute, 2 goals, an assist. Just at the right time when Saka was hurting a bit. Gives him a chance to miss a couple of days training, have a really light game yesterday, and I mean light. He barely moved, and now he's ready for Sunday, right? So it's worked out. We've just one maybe unfortunate one with Tomiyasu, but yeah, I like what he's done. And one thing about him, we all critique the manager because we're all brilliant managers, but I think he's a really quick learner. Really quick learner. I think he didn't get his rotations right in previous years. I think he's really improved in substitutions, and I think it's far more. It feels planned and strategic to me over a period of the whole month, and so far so good. With one unfortunate moment in Tomiyasu.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate moment, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Tim, it's hard for me to opine about the early stages of the game because somewhat similar to the stuttering performance that Arsenal produced, Paramount Plus, which is a service here that provides the stream, decided to harken back to the days of badly pirated illegal streams, just to give you that nostalgic feeling. It was stopping. There were color bars all over the screen. There were little pixels popping up. So it was a little difficult. I get the sense that we weren't exactly in full flow, but one of the players that I want to zero in on is Kieran Tierney. The Kieran Tierney situation is an interesting one. He didn't start a lot of games when Zinchenko wasn't available. Tomiyasu really became the first choice left back in Zinchenko's absence. He didn't even come on when Tomiyasu came off at the weekend. Cedric did, but he did then come on after that. In this game, he's obviously the hero. He scores a beautiful goal. The technique is brilliant. He hits it beautifully. You can see from his celebration what it means to him. But he plays the role differently. And I'm wondering, as you watch this, did you see a Tierney who I think had been instructed to say, look, this is how you play fullback. Go play fullback the way you play fullback. And, not necessarily Mikel not trying to push round pegs into square holes. How do you think about the Tierney performance, but also in the context of how we traditionally like to see that left back playing sort of tucked in and more in midfield?
Yeah. Mugs at the ready. I wrote about this week about why I think Arteta does prefer Tomiyasu, and I think I think there are a few things like pairings with the left winger and things like that. But I think the main reason is, we talk a lot about those 5 lanes of attack. I think the player that's in the way most for Tierney is Xhaka, because Xhaka's taking up one of those 5 lanes of attack now, and he's doing it really, really well. And so there kind of isn't space for an overlapping fullback because we've got our front 4, and then it's Xhaka who's the 5th one, and it's not Tierney. And Xhaka's doing it so well that I think Arteta's kind of thinking, well, I don't really need an overlapping fullback there anymore. And the other kind of advantage of that, and I wrote about Martinelli a few weeks ago, and I was looking at his touches, and his touches in his own third have dramatically reduced this season. And I don't think he's got lazy, put it that way. I think it's because essentially the left back kind of doesn't really overlap anymore, is there in midfield, and therefore Martinelli doesn't have to track back. We're able to keep him nice and high. It's very, I've said it before, like I think Saka and Martinelli it's impossible to resist the Man City kind of comparisons. Martinelli Saka to me is Sterling Sane. Xhaka's Gundogan to me in this system. So, and I think it's kind of as simple as that. That while Xhaka's playing and filling up that 5th lane and doing such good things, there just isn't really a need for an overlapping fullback. So, that's kind of unfortunate for Tierney, and it's really kind of difficult to see how that changes. However, it looks like Tomiyasu's probably not going to be available for Sunday, and probably beyond that. Let's see what his World Cup's like. I don't think we've had any news on that so far that I've seen anyway. So, Tierney might well get his chance. I suspect still that Zinchenko might start on Sunday, particularly because Ukraine aren't in the World Cup. So we're not jeopardising that for him if we try and get him through a couple of games and then say, right, you've got 6 weeks off after that to really sort yourself out. So I think basically for Tierney, he did Tierney things. He scores the winner, great stuff. But once Xhaka's back in that team, I'm just not sure I really see a route back in for him unless it's Smith Rowe, who's the left winger, and then kind of maybe comes out of those lanes of attack and he moves into the build-up and Tierney goes past him. So I do think things are kind of tough for Tierney at the moment. I don't think it's because he's playing badly. I think it's a fit thing, and I don't see that going away.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. And the thing is, I think he's a really good player. And so it is the situation where it's such a luxury to have a player of that quality in your squad that can give you a different way to play the position. And at the same time, I just wonder where this goes long term. We don't have to worry about it now, but certainly there is a team that would love to have an overlapping fullback of Tierney's quality. It's just that we're not the team that would love to have that. I mean, not that we don't love having him, but in most games. So I'll be curious to see how that develops. And Clive, the reality is that the Europa League group stage being done means there are a lot of players that we're just not going to see that much now, or may not see that much. This was their chance. This was their showcase. And so as we look back on the group stage, and in particular this game, I'm curious if you think there's a player who stood out for you as saying, I've got a bigger role to play in the first team, because we just about got through the group stage. I don't think we were bad per se. I think there were a few performances, this one certainly among them, that was just enough. I think we definitely managed our way through a lot of these games. I'm not sure we managed our way through this one. Towards the end, it did feel pretty nervy. But I'm wondering how you look at the players. And I think in the group, we could say there's Holding. There would have been Turner. Turner might be the one, but you don't need a backup keeper unless your keeper goes down. But we look, there's Holding. I guess there's Tierney, you could say, which is crazy to say. Sambi, Nelson to some extent, Nketiah, Marquinhos, Vieira. Anyone stand out for you in the group stages or in this game as having really just sort of raised their hand and said, I can be more relevant in the Premier League in the big games?
I think they've all had good moments and bad moments. And that's probably been quite generalistic, but I think it's true. Matt Turner didn't convince originally, but got better and better, and really unfortunate to miss his last two games. So I would have seen no problem with him playing. They end up being the tighter game, so who knows, right? So Marquinhos, I thought, wow, what have you found here? And he's gone back in his shell a little bit. Sambi did fine, a bit underwhelming for many. We saw him in a different position against Zurich, so I don't want to keep making excuses for him, but the opportunity now to rest Xhaka's legs is there for him with Nanelli back in the room. So now we can really judge him in those roles. I think, Nelson, I'm in and out. Eddie, I'm in and out. I'm honest with you, whether it's personal, I don't want to bring personal biases into things, but I want more. But they've done their job, and Eddie did his job to me in the last season, and Nelson saved us on Sunday. So, hey, look, I just want a bit more from them, and I want a bit more from those squad positions, if I'm honest with you, and how we manipulate the buying and selling and loan market. I think is really important going forward. But the one I think has been the best one, even though some people may not agree, is Vieira, and I'd expect him to be, because I haven't forgotten Brentford. And you said it last night, Elliot. I listened to the instant reaction on my little walk this morning. When you bring just one player in to the overall group, then you can judge him. And when Vieira played at Brentford, when we didn't have Odegaard, he was excellent. And that's the game you judge him on. When we move him right wing, left 8, right 8, stroke 10, different people around him, it's a bit harder to judge him. I felt in this game yesterday, he was really quite bright in the first period and deserved a goal. Was unfortunate not to get one, then faded. So you can see there's something to work on there. And I think if we lost Odegaard, we've got a player that really mirrors him up to a point and will improve. And I think, while Smith Rowe's not available, I think his importance is important. And I do think we have a chance to really work on him over the 6-week break. Really working on whether you think he needs to be more physical, dynamic, whether he can work on his first touches. I think we have those sort of players really have an opportunity to be with their club for at least 4 weeks after a week or so holiday and really get ready for what's coming up. I think we can really judge him in 2023.
Yeah, a friend reached out on Discord and made this point, and it's something that I sort of forgot. Vieira missed all of preseason and a lot of the early start of the season. He just did not get that transitional time. And look at how the preseason impacted us. A lot of what we did in preseason really carried into the season. And Vieira is someone who didn't get that time.
Good point.
And so, we've seen the player that's in there in patches, right? But I don't think we've seen as much as we might like. I actually think in the PSV game where he played on the right, he was one of the better performers. He's just been streaky and patchy, and given that he's integrating in a new team with no preseason and really just coming out of what is his preseason, essentially with his fitness levels and the limited actual game time he's seen, I think it's fair. I think there are other players that could have stepped forward more in this group stage that didn't. I think Nketiah would probably count himself among them. Did he raise his hand and say, you can trust me in the biggest moments? I don't mean as a sub. I mean to start in favor of one of those three in the front line.
When was his last goal? Do you know his last goal? So I shouldn't ask questions you may not have the answer for.
I think it was 1972.
Was it the Zurich game? The first game against Zurich?
Everybody scored in that game, so he must have, surely. I can look it up if you want.
No, that was 2-1. I think he scored the winner, and it was 2-1 away at Zurich.
We didn't pound Zurich away.
From Marquinhos' cross, wasn't it, Tim? From Marquinhos' deep cross, back post header, right?
Away.
I can't remember whether he scored at home to Bodo Glimt. But yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. He could use a goal in a big spot.
Absolutely.
Is I think the message here. I'm not going to bother Googling it. It's Friday. Yeah, and so I think Sambi and Nketiah would be the two that I would point to that I would say these are players that we need, given the role. And I thought Mikel had an interesting comment on Sambi, Tim. He was asked how he did, and he kind of head fainted towards, he did well, like everybody. And then he said, he's playing a bit further forward. When we bought him, we had different ideas, but he's shown us he can be effective further forward, so we're trying him there. I thought that was an interesting comment because you can say someone's effective in a more advanced area, but when you say we bought him with the other thing in mind, it tells you a little bit about where he is, right? Because if you bought a guy to be the party heir apparent and he's not turning into that, then you got to go find another guy to be that, which means now Sambi's trying to prove he deserves some other role that we didn't have in mind from him. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you buy a guy to be a striker, it turns out he's not going to be a striker. Maybe he can earn a spot at another place, but it's not what you bought him for. And now you're in the wilderness of can I prove my point somewhere else? It's not to say that Sambi won't make it at Arsenal, but I thought that was an interesting comment as just a little window into what we suspected, which is we had other ideas for where this player was going to be, and maybe we're moving away from them. Did you see anything in his performance or read into those comments in a way that suggests that I'm maybe seeing this the right way, or maybe I'm just doing what I usually do, which is jumping to conclusions?
I think the comments are more interesting than the performance for the reasons that you set out. Yep. So one of the things I've learned from these games is that, unfortunately, for a podcast that analyzes every game, they defy analysis. Essentially, like player analysis, performance analysis. What we're trying to do in the Europa League group stage is get through with the bare minimum effort. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to rest players. We're trying to protect players. If we went out and played our first team in every single game, we'd get 18 points every single time, pretty much, like no doubt in my mind. But we obviously don't do that, and rightly we don't do that, and we know there's a trade-off that we probably won't get 18 points, but what we're trying to do is we're just trying to do enough because we're strong enough that we're in a position to do that in the Europa League group stage. And so that does have an impact on the B players who come in for the reasons we've talked about. It's very, very difficult. Look at Fabio Vieira at Brentford, brilliant. Look at him in these games, so-so, right? And that's why I think it's also a little bit, I don't know if unfair is the right word, but with someone like Nketiah, look, we saw what Nketiah did in the first team at the end of last season. This is very different. He's playing wide quite a lot of the time. We started Gabriel Jesus in this game, so he's playing wide again, and he's playing wide in the B team. He's playing wide with Fabio Vieira behind him and Sambi Lokonga. Like, it's not the same. It's just not. And also, these games, they lack intensity. They're basically friendlies. In terms of their intensity and in terms of their meaning. Because let's have it right, group stage football is dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful, without exception. International tournaments, Champions League, Europa League, dreadful, dreadful, dreadful. It is not about football. That is not why we have group stages. We have group stages for TV money, and that alone. And it has 0% sporting value. It's just a financial thing. So these games are rubbish, right? They just are. I don't think they're even that useful for the players that play in them. Maybe like as a bit of a training session to keep them ticking over. But I you know, you don't have to answer this, but like those listening and everything, what do you remember? Well, we've been in the group stage of the Europa League 5 times now. What do you remember from any of it? Fuck all. Absolutely
not
fuck all. Because
much.
it's rubbish. And how much do you remember from the home games in particular? I remember some of the away trips because I was on them.
Yeah.
But like when I was thinking, what jumps out at me? The only home game that jumped out in my mind from that 5 years, we played Red Star Belgrade and it was 0-0, and it jumped out because it's the worst game I've ever seen in my life. So that's what we're dealing with here, right? These are rubbish minutes for these players. What we're doing, this isn't, and this is where my thinking has changed. This is not so much about giving Sambi, Nketiah, Vieira minutes, although that's a secondary benefit. It's about not giving those minutes to players like Saka, Jesus, and Ødegaard and Martinelli. That's what it's about. It's about protecting players. So I honestly, like with Sambi, I feel like I don't think it's going to work for Sambi at Arsenal. I just don't. He's had a use for us because he's a warm body we've been able to use in games that we don't really care about. And that sounds harsh, and it is a bit harsh, and that's not really his fault. But he's still been a useful signing, but I think he'll go in the summer, and that's fine, essentially. So, I don't feel right assessing his performance in this game or any of these games because they're shit and they're kind of almost worthless. Yeah. But for Sambi, I don't think it's going to happen, and I make that judgment more on what's happened with his Premier League minutes than his Europa League minutes. The other players like Vieira and Nketiah, I'm not as worried about because I've seen what those guys do when they're surrounded by the A team, and I think it's much better than what you see here.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I don't. There's just not much to this really to get stuck into. I do think it is a case of just getting through it and doing the job. And by the way, Clive, one thing I will say about this game is they came into it pretty fired up. You could tell that. I can almost hear what the team talk was in the Zurich dressing room, which is they're not playing their starters. They don't think anything of you. They need to win this game to top the group, and they think it's going to be easy. You still have a European campaign to protect here. Go out there and show them they've been in a game. I want them to leave this game knowing they've been in a game. They've got one eye on their game at the weekend. They're looking past you, and they came out and they played like that. They were rough. They were physical. At one point, Tierney literally had his shirt torn off of him, and the referee let it go. I mean, he was just letting them get away with a lot of physicality. And so, I do wonder if you think also to some extent you have the contrasting approaches of Arsenal trying to manage their way through a game that they expect to be easy and just need to get through, and the other team wanting to turn it into a battle, and how that impacted the style of the game. Because I really think you have, an Arsenal in second gear managing the game, and a Zurich that felt like if we're not going to win this game, we're going to take prisoners. You know what I mean? That was kind of the dynamic I felt was going on.
Yeah, maybe. I think when Zurich turned up and they did a warm-up and they got 4,000 fans in the corner going absolutely mental, you're going to be motivated, right? And that's what it looked like to me. And sometimes when you turn, as an away team, when you turn up and you see your away fans there ready to go, you just turn it on. You just sometimes, as Tim knows, when you go away, you get a feeling in the ground sometimes when the fans are there. You think, yeah, we're not losing today. There is no chance. You just get a feeling. And that's why people travel away, because they want to help support a team and they feel as though they can add value to it. And so fair play to them and their crowd. They weren't the team we thought they were going to be. But I do think what Tim alluded to earlier on was a really, really salient point. And it's something I've been thinking about a little bit. But particularly around Sambi, actually, maybe we're looking at him and critiquing him, but maybe he's a hero. He's a hero because El Neni went down and he's played a lot of minutes and he's allowed Partey to be available in the big moments so we can beat Liverpool. We can beat Spurs. We can go away to Brentford. And I think if we look at players in that way, maybe we should say, look, you're actually playing a heroic role for us because our world-class players who had injuries are here when it really counts. And we've literally got Smith Rowe, who's had an injury really for a year or so, finally hoping to get him fixed. and Tomiyasu with a grade 1 hamstring at worst, right? So these guys have played their role. Whether I think they're going to take us to the promised land and win the Champions League, it's almost irrelevant, So we're a squad, and I know you're going to touch on these comments later. I suppose we're a squad. And this time last year, January, we were arguing about certain people leaving the dressing room. And we discussed culture versus results, etc. But all those players who even like Rob Holding, who sometimes you wince when certain things go on, but they're part of the dressing room, right? And they're part of that connection that we all feel. And so it's a challenge. I think it's a real challenge to analyze somebody fairly when you genuinely like them as people, and versus what we want to see. And I think how we develop the next layer of the squad is always interesting. But I do think it's really interesting now because we're going upward, and some of these can't come on the journey. It's going to be interesting to see what we actually end up doing.
Yeah. So, Tim, the group is done. We are top. Manchester United are not, and I think we should emphasize that. And I think we should point out that Manchester United, as a result, will not only have to play one of the teams that parachutes down from the Champions League, which I still think is a nonsense that happens, but set that aside. They have an extra couple of games, and they have it at a time where they would have had to play makeup games that now can't be scheduled. So it is really, just to give you a sense of the problem, this has created a fixture nightmare for United that we have avoided. So whatever frustration you're feeling, just focus on the fact that we get that couple of weeks off during the round of 32. We don't face that Champions League team then. We can make up fixtures during that time to the extent that becomes necessary. This is something we had to do, and we did it. And, I couldn't be happier that we did. I guess there's one other player maybe that we could touch on. I don't want to pick on players too much. I think it's like we all know where the squad's going and where the squad's been. But I think in Rob Holding, we sort of see that styles make the player sometimes. And, we loved him when it was 3-5-2, shut it down, like 3-2-5, whatever, last season. And he was the closer. He likes to defend. I think maybe we have built up too much that quality, but he certainly likes that part of the game. When we're more front-footed and when we have more control, I think you start to see some of the cracks, some of the things that aren't in his game. Because you mentioned, by the way, Martinelli having fewer touches in his half. And I definitely think that's because he can play further forward. I also think it's because the whole freaking team is out of their own half, right? And because we're not in our own half anymore, there are some central defenders that like that, and there are some that don't. And I think we're maybe seeing time being called on an Arsenal player who, it's been nice to have him. He's a great guy. I'm not saying he's not a great player. I do think stylistically we continue to see when he comes on that it's not quite a fit. I'm not asking him to be Saliba because that's not easy, but I think that there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of his skill set and the way we want to play with our center backs.
Yeah, definitely. He's another one whose time is coming. I think he was one of those, I've talked about this before, that kind of category of player. There are some you just get rid of straight away. There are some you keep around and say, you're a decent person to have around, you're a decent person to have in the squad. You're not going to hold us back. And those last a couple of years before you say, all right, thanks, we need to move on here. We've done like the big ticket stuff. We got the striker. We've got Saliba, we've got Ben White, we've got the goalkeeper. We've come to the point where it's your turn now. But the thing is, like, none of this is a massive drama. Like, again, Rob Holding, he's done a job in this Europa League group stage because he's allowed us to rest at least one of the centre halves. We'd like to be able to rest two, but we've been able to, rotate those minutes around a little bit. But the thing that's kind of striking me in this conversation, I think there are three players potentially who could be up for sale next summer that we've talked about: Holding, Sambi, and Tierney. We'll get paid for those guys if they go on the market in the summer. Like, Sambi's young, we'll get our money back and some, I think. Clive just said in the chat, Nuno as well. We'll get paid for him. If we decide to sell Tierney, we'll get paid for him. Like, really, Cedric is the only one left in the squad who, we're sitting there looking at his contract like an egg timer and going, fucking hell, it's 2024. Like, what were we thinking? And maybe we're trying to expedite the situation by saying, you're not even getting Europa League minutes anymore, pal. But I don't think that's going to force him out. But anyway, that's really the only player in the squad you look at and go, whereas the others, it's like, it's not a problem. They've done a job. Maybe some of them haven't developed like we wanted them to develop, but they're on good contract. They've got years on their contract. They're at good ages. We'll get paid for those players. And that's good. That's like, Tierney might be that smart sale, that brings in some cash so we can buy, like, I don't know, the party replacement long term or something like that. So it's all good. You'll get, this is just natural churn, and it happens not just in sport, in every workplace. Like, there's just natural churn when people move on, and that's actually quite a healthy situation. There aren't many sitters or squatters anymore. There's guys who we were happy to have on the journey to a particular point. I don't think any of them will kick up a big fuss or dig their heels in. If we say to Rob Holding, look, he's going to be like, 27, 28. Look, some Everton are coming in for you. Palace are coming in for you. Southampton are coming in for you. You can play every week. I think he'll probably say, okay, that's fine. And I'll get a Premier League club. So I'll still get like the salary that I want. That might happen to Sambi as well. I don't know. He might go abroad, but the money's in the Premier League, and that's all fine. Like, that's all fine. We've moved past the stage now, I think, where we're looking at players going, God, how do we get rid of this? Like, there's no ball. Well, again, apart from Cedric, maybe there aren't ball and chain players anymore. And hopefully, if I'm absolutely honest, Rob Holding, only seeing the Carabao Cup and the early rounds of the FA Cup, we might be in a bit of trouble if we have to play him long term in the Premier League. We might have to change the way we play, but yeah, he's not a problem, put it that way.
Yeah, Clive?
No, I agree with that. I think for me, it's just renewal. It's just evolution. It's just squad evolution, and we had to overspend on certain players to create this base. So everyone's looking at us saying, "Oh, look at Arsenal! They spent so heavily in the last few years." We only had to spend heavily because we had to pay people to leave, and we had to get rid of them. We had no leverage in the marketplace. Everyone knew we had to replace the squad, so we had to overpay for people. But we've overpaid for the right people in the main. And where ones and twosies haven't settled, I think Nuno hasn't really settled, and the team, much like Tierney, the team style has developed away from him slightly, and he's not been able to, at this point, been able to adapt. Now, I've been watching a few videos of him away, and he's flying up and down the line. He's not doing the inverted thing, so that's not going to change. And plus, he maybe wasn't very happy with Arsenal. No drama. Go to another country, and make your career. The thing is, we stopped giving these people away. Come to Arsenal, make your money, have a lovely time in London, then we'll give you away for free so you can negotiate your next deal and get paid even more money. The charity days are over, right? We now have a team that's developing, and hopefully we have some squad value in there. And I think that's been the big thing about the project, increasing the squad value.
I think that's an important point you've touched on, Clive, because I think that's the next thing we have to show, right? Like there, I don't like to use the word mistakes. There were things along the way we did that I think were questionable. Like, we kept Ainsley Maitland-Niles in the face of some really good offers and ultimately lost the value of the player there. Now, I realized at the time the squad was so badly broken that we were just trying to hold on to anything usable we felt we had, because we didn't really have much. We were trying to plug the holes in the ship, and we weren't necessarily ready to start sending players off. And to be fair, maybe Arteta still hadn't arrived at conclusions about players yet. He was still learning them. But now, I mean, if we know, and I'm not saying we do, but if we know Sambi's not the guy, or if we know, and I think at this point we probably know, Holding's not the guy, now we need to show that we can extract value from these players. Liverpool, when they were good, because they were good, and you always pointed this out, Clive, when you're good, those players that only play a little bit for you or aren't even playing for you, they rise in the estimation of other teams and other coaches and other managers, right? We need to show that the halo effect of us being good is that we have more value in our squad, and that we can move these players on. So let's see that we do that. I'll ask you guys both this just quickly. Did you find because I didn't care about this game at all, but I was kind of shitting it at the end. I was getting there, Clive. I mean, like, were you biting fingernails? Were you Were you getting the nervousness at the end of the game there? We made this a little bit dodgy at the end.
Yeah, I was. And we did the instant reaction yesterday, and I sort of said, so I hope I didn't sound too grumpy on there, because we come top of the group. Manchester United didn't, and I need to be a bit happier about it. But I was a bit upset that they made me nervous. Well,
Yeah, I didn't like that they made me nervous. Don't do that.
I can't be giving away too many years of my life for free, right? This is very important moments in my life. And stop doing this to me. This is all about the second goal. Let's be honest, lads. Let's be honest. This scenarios, even the fact we loved Rob Holding towards the end of last season, it's all about the second goal. We need to get the second goal a lot more. In this game, that was a 2-0 first half that turned into a 1-0. And that 1-0, things can change very, very quickly on a corner, on a set piece. We've got to focus on the second goal as a group a lot more. Because when we do, we murder people. But we've got to focus on it. You know, unfortunately, yesterday with Vieira's shots hitting Jesus on the backside and Jesus' chance, and Vieira had another one that he should have put high, put low. This is the stuff we need to deal with. And I don't know what our big chance ratio is like. And I heard in the podcast this morning, just briefly, that if we keep scoring at our current rate, we're going to get over 90 goals. I never thought that would happen. And I'm not sure it's going to happen. But we need to focus on that second goal so we can enjoy this journey a little bit more. There's too many 1-0ers, mate, for me. And I can't deal with it, Elliot. Can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Tim?
I completely agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that's bitten us on the bum a little bit during October. Like Leeds, we don't get that second goal. Southampton, we don't get that second goal. Forest is one of those games that either finishes 1-0 or 5-0. But we got the second goal, so it's 5-0. And actually, just to give myself some credit, this was the game I thought Forest would be. I thought you'd switch round Forest and Zurich. I was thinking nervy 1-0 v Forest and then beat Zurich 5-0 was honestly what I was thinking.
Keep getting it backwards.
And it was the other way around. But yeah, Clive's exactly right. I think if we go 2-0 up in this game, we win 4-5-0. But while it's not, and then when it gets to the last 15, 20 minutes, you know, the kind of nervous energy comes into it a little bit. And you saw we brought on the big guns. We brought on players who you'd expect to control the game, like Ødegaard, like Partey, like Saka. And it didn't happen because the emotion of the game was very, very different at that stage. And I think you could see everyone was thinking, shit, we don't want those games in February. And I mean, the thing is now we are going to have games in February, probably on those midweeks, but there'll be Everton and Man City in the Premier League. And we won't be looking at how and where we squeeze those in. Because you look at United, Dale Johnson from ESPN tweeted about it today. He's like, there's no room. There's absolutely no room as it stands in the schedule for United's 2 games because all of their midweeks are potentially taken. And that's the situation we'd have been in as well. But now we can fit those games into February. So it's still going to be quite an intense February. We don't get the weeks off, but we're not looking at playing like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in May. Get them
they're going to bring double headers. If you're familiar with baseball, they're going to bring double headers into football.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, you know, it's not just about the games themselves. Those playoff games, they're difficult. You just got to look at the teams in them. They're difficult. They're not games that we're going to be able to play like Rob Holding and Sambi Lokonga in if we were in them. So it is a massive relief. And Clive's right. I think 2-0 Arsenal quickly becomes 4-5-0 Arsenal. But Clive's right. We've got to get that second goal like we did against Forest, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, well said. All right, well, we got to get to Chelsea. We got to talk about that, and I think we'll spend the rest of our time looking forward to that because we got another point to prove. But Tim, I think it's fair to say Arsenal is a lifestyle. You would agree with that, right?
Oh, yes.
You know what else is a lifestyle? The Schmoo, that's right. We schmoo? Do you? That's the question the Schmoo is asking. And right now you can go to theschmoo.com and get 1 month free of a relationship with you or relationship with others when you sign up today. That's the Schmoo, SHMEW, the Schmoo, SHMEW.com, not to be confused, of course, with the Schmoo, SCHMOO. So you want to go to the Schmoo, now I got to get it right, the Schmoo, SHMEW. Okay, we schmoo, do you? Is the schmoo right for you? You're vibrant, vivacious, and occasionally participate in antisocial behavior. You like fresh air and spending time with people you care about. Maybe you wake up in strange places without memory of the previous evening. The Schmoo is a lifestyle brand that understands your needs. And it's time to learn more. We knew there was more, and like many of you, we felt let down by the Schmoo. One day we had a realization we wanted to share with everyone. Due to the relationship with our parent company, the Schmoo is not available in Croatia, and we are sorry about that. What are people saying? Well, Alan M. says, I knew I had to make a change, and this was one. Sarah R. said, I didn't know anything about the Schmoo until I heard about it. And Rebecca S. says, they asked me if I schmoo. I didn't at the time, but now I do. We schmoo, do you? That's the question. There's more to know, and we want you to know that. Go to theschmoo.com, SHMEW, theschmoo, SHMEW.com. And remember, every time you sign up, free bottle of Drakkar Noir with every purchase. The Schmoo is part of the Black River Conglomerate Industries family of companies and not available in Croatia. Theschmoo.com. Do it now. Clive, is that enough of that?
Oh, very much so indeed.
Have you schmooed?
No, please don't do this to me. I live a very shallow life. It's just football, work, family. I don't do anything else.
All right. Well, you just need to find out if the Schmoo is right for you. Okay. Enough of that. Clive, it's Chelsea on Sunday, and we have another point to prove. Another point to prove, not that we can beat a good team, and I will discuss how good Chelsea is, but that we can go away and do it. I'm so mad we didn't get the result. I think our performance warranted at United. And of course, we're going to look back on the Let It Flow initiative, not really playing out with the Martinelli goal at Old Trafford, because I do want to just make this point since I'm mad about it. They let it flow unless a goal is scored. If a goal is scored, they VAR it and they bring it back. Don't make a whole lot of sense to me, friends, but that's how it works. But I'm not mad about it. Now we go to Stamford Bridge against a Chelsea team that just got smoked by Brighton. Graham Potter's still trying to figure out what he wants his Chelsea to be. He's been mixing and matching with lineups, with formations. I don't think he really knows yet what he wants to do with this group. And I think we're facing them at a reasonable time to try to extract that win we need from the confusion that they're experiencing. But we have not yet put on our resume a big away win, to the extent that, you don't count something like Palace, for example, a big away win. We did it to Spurs at home. We did it to Liverpool at home. This is another point to prove. How important is it for us to go? I mean, it's such a dumb setup. Like, it's important to win every game. But how do you think about this in terms of us showing we can do it away, especially given that our last two away performances, I think, had a little bit of concern creeping in?
Yeah, I think the players' minds have been on this game. The way Saka played last night, and the fact we sat Martinelli for the whole game, I think was significant. I think if you look at Chelsea, you look at that space in that right-hand side of their defence, mate, we're going in there. We're going in there big time. And so I really think we've targeted this game. We're going to have a fresh Xhaka. We got Partey barely done anything yesterday. Okay, we potentially got a decision to make at left back, but we have a very good one to put in there. And we've got also Zinchenko to end the game. Some people may say Zinchenko will start. I think it's a very big first game to come back into, personally. But having the extra, wish he was fit, mind, because having the extra player in case they Conor Gallagher party again would be nice in central areas. But I just think they've got too many people not quite at it to stop us, right? So if they're relying on Trevor Chalobah, Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, I'm not sure if Koulibaly is going to be there or not. Is it going to be Cucurella, wide wing back, because Chilwell's out, James is out, Jorginho, he's not getting any younger. What are they going to do centre midfield? They could put Conor Gallagher in there. He's good off the ball, but not so good on the ball. We can put pressure in that space. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. They've also got the front three if they want to go Sterling, Mount and Aubameyang. We're used to those players. They're not new to us. And I think we have the ability to control those spaces, control those areas. I'm hopeful. I am concerned about the early kickoff, but we seem to do well in early kickoffs. I don't like the gap, but I also feel we go there with less inferiority complex than we do when we go to City, United in particular. When we go to those grounds, Liverpool, I feel it weighs on us a little bit more. But when we go to Chelsea, I just feel we go there with a level of confidence. I think we've won the last two. And I don't think
it used to be that way. That's a nice change, let me tell you, because that used to be a house of horrors for us for a while.
Yeah, but I think because it's Chelsea and because we know how they've grown, Arsenal fans don't have it with them. They accept it from City that they've got they're oil rich. They accept that Manchester United are the biggest club in the world by fan base, wherever it is. And Liverpool, no one goes into Anfield and win. I mean, Van Dijk lost his first game just the other week, right? So there's a level of acceptance that they're like the firepower. But we're not having Chelsea. We're not having that. And we're not having Spurs. And Tim knows what I mean when I say this. When we go to those grounds, we're not having it. And so I think we're going to be fine. There isn't that same level of fear. We don't play the badge. We play the team. And I think we're going to really go in there with a point to prove. And Elliot, mate, the team talk's been done for us, isn't it? With Aubameyang's little advert. So, hey, let's see what happens.
Yeah, Tim, how do you think that plays into the narrative here? I'm curious if you think Aubameyang will start. I mean, who the hell knows? But this is one of those things where fans and players, I think, are slightly different. And it gets into the comments that El Neni made. He just came out with some comments saying, when that happened to Aubameyang, it sent a message to the rest of us. If it can happen to Aubameyang, it can happen to all of us. There can't be any egos in the dressing room. It showed us all that we have to be together, and now everybody in the dressing room is together. I tend to think that sometimes fans misunderstand players. I'm pretty sure all those players still like Aubameyang. They seem to like Aubameyang in the All or Nothing series. I don't think they have a grudge against him, so I don't know that I think they will want to get one over on him. I do think Aubameyang would probably like to get one over on Mikel. And as a result of that and that motivation, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts, but I don't know if it would bother me if he starts, only because it's not that he can't score goals. It's what he does. You got to get into the box to get him a goal. And teams haven't been doing that against us. How do you think about the Aubameyang factor in this game? And do you expect him to start? Because I think I do.
Yeah, definitely. I think Chelsea'd be silly not to. Chelsea just went to Brighton last weekend, and one of the reasons they got spanked was because Brighton were bang up for it in front of Graham Potter, and the fans were bang up for it. They wanted to prove a point, not just about Graham Potter, but Potter took like the whole backroom staff with him as well, and some Brighton fans. So I think quite understandably quite upset about that, and they really wanted to get one over on him. And we saw, look at how they started that game. They had the fire lit under their arse, and like you say, I don't think that there'll be that Arsenal will want to show Aubameyang. I think Aubameyang will want to show Arsenal, or more specifically Arteta. I really do. And we've been here before with Van Persie, with Adebayor. I've never been sure of anything, I think, since we went to Old Trafford the first time Van Persie played against us, and it was just like, let's just get this over with. Let's just get it out of the way. And Adebayor at City as well. It's like, let's just get this out of the way, shall we? And I do kind of, that's just the fatalist in me, because I think you're right. I don't think Aubameyang has pulled up any trees at Chelsea. And I actually think for us, I'm sure that there was like a kind of, if this can happen to the captain, and, it sent a message and discipline and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I think more simply than that, it just removed a bit of a tactical problem for us, in that we never figured out how to use Aubameyang. We never figured it out. We know, on the wing wasn't quite perfect. Him up front wasn't quite perfect, because you really have to get in the box. He doesn't give you a lot outside the box. And I think, honestly, it just removed... Look, it kind of gave us another one short term, because then we were playing with Lacazette, and to be honest, I don't think that was a lot of fun for 6 months. But
functional at best.
yeah. Like we've got the guy now. Like I think there are no regrets on Arsenal's side about this with how we've ended up. And so, like, more than that, like, I think it was a tactical issue. We had two strikers. I think Aubameyang a lot better than Lacazette, and I felt was a superior option. However, we had two strikers that we just couldn't quite make them work despite their qualities. And honestly, I just think it just took that issue away fairly neatly. And I think that, more than the quote unquote attitude thing, is the important thing here. But undoubtedly, I think it will probably light a fire under Aubameyang's arse, and I think we have to be prepared for that.
The player. Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, mate. You may be about to say the same thing, because
Unlikely.
Tim always said, I'll give him a shout out here. He always said that he couldn't see how Aubameyang and Martinelli could really coexist together. And I thought, we were developing a player, but but it wasn't really a massive issue at the time. But you know what? He's got half a point there. I was watching All or Nothing yesterday, just doing some research and homework. And the amount of times that Martinelli wasn't playing because we were trying to work the Aubameyang stuff out, it just makes you laugh. And to think that he wasn't playing as much, I wonder how many games he played last season. To think he wasn't playing for a long period because we were putting our hair out over Aubameyang just feels ridiculous now. It really does. And soon as Aubameyang went, suddenly Martinelli exploded into the team, and now we can't imagine a team without him, right? And that's how development happens really, really quick if the pathway is cleared.
Yeah. So then, Clive, I mean, if there's another player who would like to prove a point, then it's the guy who replaced Aubameyang, and that's Jesus. I think if you asked him in a quiet moment over 5 or 6 glasses of bourbon, which is the appropriate number, obviously, Mikel Arteta would say he wished that Jesus had scored against Zurich. I think he would have loved that. The one that goes off the guy's back, I think, is the one. I think that's going in. Just get the monkey off his back and I think it would just get it out of his mind. Mikel said all the right things, obviously, after the match. He's doing all the right things. The goals are going to come. I said on the instant reaction that I think Jesus is going to score a hat trick against Chelsea, and I stand by it. The guy is doing all the right things in all the right places, and I do think finishing is a skill, but I don't think he's bad at it. I just don't think he's elite at it, and everything's going wrong for him. The one that he just can't get his foot on at the post last week, the one that the defender comes back and gets to him in the 1v1, was that against Southampton, where he's through and the defender gets back? There's a number of them against Forest. We just a little too close to the keeper. He's in all the right places. He could have had 6 goals in the last 2 games. I think it's all going to come down like an avalanche on Chelsea, and I can't wait for it. But I'm curious how you think about Jesus going into this game on the back of this, goal scoring drought, if you want to call it that. I think his play is as good as ever. I'm not concerned about it, but he could use a goal, and this would be a beautiful time for him to get that little dry spell over with.
Yeah, I want us to dominate the midfield, and I think because Tim was talking earlier about us being like Man City. Sometimes I see us more like Liverpool, but only in certain phases. I think we're a combination of both, if you know what I mean. Because I think Jesus plays like a diamond centre forward, and so we almost play like an interior diamond on occasions. But Xhaka's breaking that diamond up by running through, and Odegaard's dropping in. So we're not a stick-on, non-flexible diamond, but I think Jesus is that central point. And I would like to see him be a bit more shoulders facing the right way on the half turn, and maybe letting people work in midfield and do their job to allow him to be the striker he wants him to be. But he's still getting the chances. His secondary movement is excellent. I don't worry. I'm with you, Elliot. I think some of the chances, the one that hit the goalkeeper's back yesterday, you're taught to hit the ball down primarily, and if you hit the ball down, then if it goes up, then fine. But he sort of hit the ball to the middle of the goal, which is goalkeeper height. The goalkeeper's he's gone to get a hot dog, right? And he still hit his back. It's just unlucky. It will come. The flashing volleys he's had, it will come. It will come. And much like we were fortunate when we had Saka's little knock, that Nelson came in and did the job. We lost the one game in a month we could have lost. It didn't cost us anything, apart from maybe Tomiyasu's hamstring. Maybe, it didn't cost anything losing at PSV. Jesus missed chances. Maybe it cost us a bit at Southampton. Maybe. That's a big maybe. But if he scores against Chelsea, and all sins are forgiven. When you look at the month of October, what we had, all sins are forgiven. And while he had a couple of underpowered games post the Liverpool knock, and I think that knock was maybe bigger than we realised, but now he's got his power and zip back, and I don't worry about him. He'll be ready to go on Sunday.
Yeah, I absolutely think he'll be ready to go Sunday. Tim, I think it's the thing that we now obviously have to prove, that we can go away and still be dominant Arsenal. I didn't really have concerns about that, but I think the Leeds game and certainly Southampton game as well led to some concerns. But the one thing we have done, even in those games, we've started really fast. And this is a game that I think we want to start fast again. Now, the interesting thing about Potter is where this has looked like a Potter team so far is in possession. They do keep the ball a lot. And where it hasn't looked like a Potter team so much is defensively. They are allowing teams to get chances and conceding a bit. And I think about the Liverpool game, because the Liverpool game was really the first time we were going to come up against a team that wants the ball too, right? That keeps the ball, but at the expense of their defense. That was a wild game, but it gave us a lot of chances. Potter games are, I think of them as being about control, but I do wonder if you think this could actually be kind of a sneaky score fest, or at least an open game, in the sense that the one other game this season where we've come up against a team that really wants the ball and really wants to dominate possession, it was very back and forth. And it was similar, right? A Liverpool team that can keep the ball, that can create chances, but does have the ability to get exposed defensively. I think Chelsea are similar, but with less threat. So if the Liverpool game is any indication, maybe this could be, kind of a fun ding-dong back and forth kind of affair.
Yeah, I suspect it might be, actually. And both teams played European games this week, albeit they played theirs earlier. I think there's a few reasons that it's... obviously you always want to start a game well, but I think there's a few reasons here we really want to do it. First of all, because I think Chelsea, I'm sure a big part of their team talk will be they played on Thursday night. Most of their starters had some, time in the game, and even if they're not knackered, that affects preparation time. Like there is a good chance that affects how you start a game. I think also, again, what Brighton showed against Chelsea, Brighton won that game in the first half an hour. And I think it's really important to do that, particularly against the Graham Potter team, because he will change formations. He will tweak things. Like he's a real in-game coach. And I think if we have them on the rack in the first 20 minutes and we don't take advantage, I'd back him to change formation, make some kind of did he take Cucurella off against United in the first half an hour or so, because United were on top.
Went to a back four, didn't he, Tim?
Yeah. I see where this is going, and stem the bleed right there. So Potter will do that. He'll hook players after half an hour. He'll change the formation. So it's not just about starting well, it's about capitalising on it. Against Brighton made that irrelevant because they went and scored 3 goals in the first half and won the game then. And yeah, so I'd like to see us try and do the same sort of thing, at the risk of stating the obvious. But I'm with you, Elliot. I think this could be another Liverpool game. I think this could be a 2-2, a 3-2, either way. I see it being quite an open game, because Chelsea, I think their ambition under Potter is to have that kind of control, but they haven't got Potter players yet, and that will take a couple of transfer windows to do. And until then, I can see them being a little bit up and down, maybe a bit like us under Emery. One game good, one game bad type thing.
Yeah, well, there's definitely one big decision for Arteta to make, as far as I can tell, Clive, and that's just what to do at left back. Tomiyasu not going to be available. Tierney has not been the guy he's wanted to go to play the kind of football we want to play. At least that's my belief, based on the fact that you would think Tierney would be the immediate backup when Zinchenko's not in there. Tomiyasu came in to stop Salah and has kept the place ever since. And Zinchenko's available. He was warming up to come on before the Tomiyasu injury, then didn't come on, which suggests to me that he's like, I need one of these guys for Sunday, so I'm not even going to risk Zinchenko. But I know in the instant reaction and some other places, people have said they think it's too soon for Zinchenko. My opinion is Zinchenko will start. I don't think you agree. Talk me through how you think we play left back at left back.
Well, I don't agree, not because I don't think if everyone was fit and healthy and had
because of readiness, I know.
Yeah, just pure readiness. But Tierney empties the tank, mate. He emptied the tank last night. He's the one player that said, I don't care, I'm giving it everything. I want to play. So if I'm the manager, I have to reward that. I have to. You can't say to him, look, mate, you're not going to play against Liverpool because tactically I want to see something different, particularly on defensive transitions or lefty versus a righty at left back. And then you go out there and you get a man-of-match performance on the European night. You help the team qualify top of the group. You rinse yourself completely. You set up chances. You score the goal. I'll tell you what, mate, I'm not going to play you now because this guy's back. If that happens, I'd have the ump if I'm Kieran Tierney. I really would, because the culture in the dressing room is if you play well, Eddie, Reece, train well, you see where I'm going? You get a chance to play, right? And people have to move. Look at Sleeper's come in. Ben White's had to move position to get into his team. There's no debate. And so I think you have to reward the performance. And whether he lasts the game, that's a different question, because he's somebody that I'm not sure can do these games in close proximity, based on the effort he put in. So I think we'll be fine. I also think sometimes what we naturally do, especially us guys, is we try to see how we play. We try to see the patterns. And then we try to project forward. And we just can't imagine a situation where Kieran Tierney is going to play for us. And yes, he could be a smart 45, 50 mil sell to Newcastle and we do something there. But also he's a good player. I think sometimes we forget that. And he can play football in different parts of the pitch. Maybe not not the thing that we see as his primary skill, but he's a good player. And I think we need people of his experience level that have played in the league, that understand what it's like to go to Stamford Bridge and win and do something and be a major player. I see no qualms of him starting this game. Maybe he may not end it, but that's a different discussion.
I definitely don't have any qualms with him starting it. I think it does change slightly how we play. I think the interesting thing is we've seen that without Zinchenko, the left side of the attack doesn't get as much service. We get a little bit more of that right side bias. I do wonder if Tierney plays, who do we let him overlap and we drop someone else in? Do we change our shape? The other thing that's hard is we just don't know, and Mikel doesn't know, how Potter will set up. The one thing Potter has going for him about not knowing his team yet is he hasn't been consistent with lineups or formations or systems yet. So, yeah, Clive?
Sorry, mate. I think you're absolutely right about Graham Potter, by the way. But just lastly, Tierney can play centrally. He can do it. We don't see it as his primary skill, but he has done it, and his position is narrowing. And I think as long as he can distribute the ball smartly out to Martinelli, that's all that really counts. Where did he score his goal from yesterday? He scored his goal from the D, right? So he's getting more comfortable in these
he loves
areas.
to cut inside with the ball at his feet, no question.
Yeah,
I'm talking about that standing 3 yards from Partey, playing almost like a double six,
Yeah, well, there's different ways to progress the ball, right? If Gabriel progresses the ball like he normally does, and he gets it second phase, you want him to be a transition defender in there, and he's quite sharp. But also, he brings something else, Elliot. He brings a diag into our play. Bang, switch. Tomiyasu can't do that off his left foot. Do you know what I'm saying? So there are pluses and minuses to style. And much like you're going to say about Graham Potter changing his team, which is make us question how Chelsea are going to play, Kieran Tierney playing inside and outside and we switching positions, why can't we do a level of rotation?
Sure.
I just think it's we shouldn't get fixated on what we think is our only style. And when we miss a player, then we go, oh, well, he's not for the future. No, we just evolve another way. And evolution is what we want to see happen from within the squad, in my opinion.
A lot of interesting things in this match to look at. Tim, I ultimately think we are as good, as they, not as good. We're better than they are. We have to show we can do it away. I think the Aubameyang thing would be an interesting challenge because the one thing we have seen Saliba struggle with, he hasn't struggled with much, but runs, tracking runs sometimes. Does he get turned around? Does he always follow the run just right? Aubameyang, if he still has anything elite left in his game, I still think he makes really intelligent runs. So, keeping an eye on that would certainly be an interesting one. Not having Tomiyasu, Mason Mount, tricky off the dribble. They have a couple of players that can be tricky off the dribble. Do we have that left back? The thing with Tierney is I think he can be a good defender 1v1. I think Tomiyasu is stronger at dealing with those kind of things. So defensively, it'll be interesting. Going forward, I trust us to create chances. I really do. I think pressing them can work. And it's just down to showing we can play our game away. It really is that simple because I think if we play our game, we're better than them. Who knows what they will look like by the end of the season. I still tend to think Graham Potter's a pretty talented coach, but I don't think they're where they need to be yet, which is understandable. And I think if we play our game, we'll be effective. So do you want to just give me sort of your final thoughts on where the battles need to be won and what the outcome might be?
Yeah, they're doing interesting things with their wing backs, right? They're playing like Sterling and Pulisic, almost like wing backs. And look, I'm sure that's not what Graham Potter really wants. I don't know whether that's whether that's kind of square pegs in round holes or whether he just doesn't trust the different, like they're quite old in defence, like Thiago Silva, Koulibaly. I don't understand why they spent all that money on Koulibaly when one of their biggest issues is that their best centre-half's 38 in Thiago Silva. So, we can definitely move them around. around the back, and that's something that we should really target as well. And in possession as well, like Kante's not really there anymore, injured quite a lot. So, I think there are players we can target. Like they're quite old in their spine, like Jorginho, Aubameyang. These are players we can move around, I think, and that's got to be our kind of our target. Obviously, around the sides, Chelsea are strong, like Pulisic, Sterling. You got Sterling and Aubameyang running in behind. I tend to think that I tend to think that once they tweak in other areas, perhaps get the centre mids that Potter really wants, the fullbacks he really wants, then that, I mean, it might be too late for Aubameyang by then, but I think in principle, Sterling and Aubameyang running in behind in a kind of transitional style could do really well for them. But you're right, they're not there yet. This for me is just another opportunity in the season. It does feel like every game feels like this at the moment, which is good, like, because we're not going into games thinking this doesn't really matter that much, like when we were finishing 8th. But yeah, to your point, it's another good opportunity to go and get a really good result at Stamford Bridge and either keep or extend that gap to them in the league. Because if we win this game, like, it's going to be really hard for Chelsea to catch us if we win this game. So again, for me, this is about, at the very least, maintaining distance. I will not cry over a draw in this game. I think we can win it, but I think a draw acceptable as long as we go and beat Wolves next week, which I think we can do. So, bring it on. It's just another challenge for this group, and they've passed most of them so far this season.
Well said. I guess I just look at it and I say the teams that have been effective against us, and Leeds and Southampton both did it to some extent. They really crowded out the middle and made life difficult for Thomas Partey. The distances got wrong. We struggled to connect midfield to attack. I just look at Chelsea and I'm like, who's going to shut down Thomas Partey in that Chelsea team? Maybe Conor Gallagher will get the job, to harry and harass him. It's not going to be Jorginho. He's going to stand there and just want to ping passes 30 yards. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I don't know. I don't know if they have the midfield to take Partey out of the game. And right now that's been really the only proven effective method of shutting us down. So we'll see how that goes. Clive, final thought on that. We'll get out of here.
Yeah, the trick is in our wide men, mate. If we can pin their back 3 into a back 5 in the wide areas. The trick is Saka and Martinelli. They need looking after. And Tim is already saying that Chelsea are old at the back. I'm sorry, mate. Our 2 young 21-year-olds have got dancing feet. They're too fast for them. If we get help from the referees, when they get their first big foul that a card comes out, it's over for them. Honestly, it is. Because they can't do what they did last. No one can ignore, like, Jesus, like you can Lacazette. You can't ignore him neither. So I can't see them covering the 3 of them. And they're all ready to bring out a performance, in my opinion. So if you put the emphasis of the game with those 3, I think we'll be fine. But we need the first goal, second goal. And then let's just sit and watch what they do, because they're not dumb. They've got some smart players there, expensive players and high-wage players. So they're used to big games. But I think we're going to have a bit more speed in the wide areas to really hurt them.
Yeah, it'll be really fascinating to see. And it's so weird because, again, I don't think of Potter's teams this way, but I could see this being a really stretched game between 2 teams that want to be in the attacking third, want to have a lot of the ball. The only other game that's this season we've really seen that was Liverpool, and that game got really stretched. So could be fun for the dreaded neutral who nobody likes, but I really have a feeling for Jesus in this game. Again, he's doing all the things right and finishing. Again, it's a skill, but it's also on a continuum. It ebbs and it flows. He's had a lot of things go against him. I think he's going to have a lot of things go his way against Chelsea. Another point to prove. Win away. Win a big away game. That's really the last thing we have left to show, where everybody's just going to have to say, this is real. This is absolutely real. To the extent that anybody's doubting it, that's really the last thing to show, and I think we can show it. So let's leave it there. Big game on Sunday. We'll have an instant reaction for that, and then rewatch of both halves, because if it's 5-0 first half, 5-0 second half to get to the 10-0, how do you pick a half? You watch them both, and we will do that. So thank you for being here. We love you so much. Enjoy the game wherever you be watching. Tim's on Twitter, @Stoberto. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thanks very much. And it's no longer Stilberto, it's Stillmanator.
Sorry, Stillmanator. That's right. Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. That's right. Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
I am still blockable at Yankee Gunner. Don't forget to do that. We love you so much. So much. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Chelsea 0.